Hakuna Matata. Welcome, Husker Nation, to a Victory Sunday edition of the Carriker Chronicles. Now, in my opinion, this game against Minnesota was the most important game of the season so far. Maybe not the biggest, but the most important, and I'll tell you why. You look at what Nebraska can do the rest of this season. They have the opportunity to go 10-2 and get into a major bowl game for the first time since 2001. And depending on what happens in that bowl game or the rest of the season, a possible top 10 ranking when the final rankings come out. Now, that'd be the first time, and arguably it could be the best season Nebraska's had in the past decade and a half, the past 15 years. Now, and Nebraska lost to Minnesota on Saturday. It would have been their third loss in a row. It would have been the third time they lost to Minnesota at home in a row. And following what happened at Ohio State, that little embarrassment there, this season could have really spiraled out of control. So I think this was a very important victory for the Huskers. Now, for me, it all started with Tommy Armstrong. Probably you two, no shocker there. The fact is, all week we were wondering, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? He gives us the best opportunity to win. And that's no slight to Riker Fife, but when 2 + 2 = 4, you can't argue with math. It's just science. The fact of the matter is, Tommy Armstrong was the difference between a win and a loss in this football game. And my favorite stat for Tommy from this game was 3 total touchdowns to no turnovers. He was the MVP of the Minnesota game. And in my opinion, I think he's earned it. The team should make him a team captain going forward. Now, as a general whole, we outproduced and outgained Minnesota by over 100 yards. We had 374 yards, they had 265 yards. The Minnesota running back, Rodney Smith, coming into this game in his last 4 games, check out these stats. He had 508 combined total rushing yards and 8 total touchdowns. Now, the Black Shirts defense held Minnesota as a team to a total rushing effort of 85 yards at only 2.5 yards per carry, while the Huskers themselves almost doubled that at nearly 5 yards per carry. And for me, it really started up front along the defensive line with Kevin Maurice and Stoltenberg. They played some of their best football of the year against the run and really controlled the interior of that Minnesota offensive line and the running game. Our offensive line showed you that they can be a little bit better when they get healthy. And the return of Gerald Foster, or the debut, if you will, of Gerald Foster at guard, I think helped a lot. He played very well. He hurt his knee in August and was thought to be gone for the year, but was able to come back and play in this game, and he played very well. Now, as far as the defensive line as a whole, I would like to see a little bit more consistent pressure with just a 4-man rush. But when the Black Shirts mixed up their blitzes and they blitzed, they did confuse and they did get pretty good pressure on the Minnesota quarterback. Now, something that did stand out to this game, in this game to me, as I'm sure it did to you, were the penalties. We had 8 penalties for 81 yards. It basically gave the Minnesota Golden Gophers 10 points in this football game, and it nearly cost us the football game, in my opinion. The Huskers were a little bit undisciplined in this area, but also some of the calls by these referees, I mean, it was like they came straight out of a cockatoo's rear end, in my opinion. The personal foul call on Cethan Carter, the guy flopped. That guy should be in the NBA, for goodness sakes, as good as he is at flopping. The pass interference calls, this ain't two-hand touch. It ain't flag football, ladies and gentlemen. And the punches that some of the Minnesota players got away with and no flags were thrown, absolute joke. You look at the first drive that Minnesota had in that football game, 14 plays. They took up almost half the quarter. Their longest touchdown drive of the year. The longest touchdown drive that the Black Shirts have given up all year. Why? Because we actually stopped them twice on 2 third downs and should have forced them to punt. What? Penalties, extended that drive, ended up giving Minnesota their first touchdown of the game. Now, Mike Riley, Mr. Riverboat Gambler himself, goes for it 2 more times on 4th down and leads to 2 touchdowns. Our first touchdown in the first quarter and our go-ahead touchdown in the 4th quarter. Now, I would have personally kicked that field goal, but hey, I got no problem with a coach who tries to win the game and isn't afraid of losing it. The issue I had was on 2nd down, 2nd and 1, leading into that 4th and 1 and 3rd and 1. Those 2 down, 2nd down and 3rd down, we passed the ball. We got to be able to run the ball in those situations. That was my biggest issue. And in the first half, we seemed to pass the ball a lot more than we ran the ball. In fact, I believe it was 14 passes to only 8 runs. Now, we ended up about 50-50 play calling, 53%. Actually, 53% of the time we actually ran the football by the end of the game. But here's something that we all are aware of. We're a 4th quarter football team. I wish we'd be a little bit more consistent the first 3 quarters. That'd be really nice. But in that 4th quarter, the Black Shirts defense is number 1 in the nation and only giving up 20 points in 10 games so far this year in the 4th quarter. Now let me give you a little N is for knowledge basic math. 20 points, 10 games, that means we give up an average of a safety every 4th quarter of every game. Now, coming into this game on Saturday, I asked Well, I predicted there would be a butt whooping on Saturday, but I asked, would we supply the butt or the whooping? And I also said, I didn't care if it was supermodel gorgeous or rear end ugly. We need to do whatever we had to do to win this football game. Now, we definitely didn't supply the butt to this whooping, and I wouldn't call it ugly or gorgeous, but what I would call it is a great freaking win. Now, until Tuesday's show, just so you know, the Carriker Chronicles are now Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, 3 days a week, every other day. So until Tuesday's show, go Big Red, and always remember to throw the ball.